Roger Waters had a complete meltdown and destroyed $50,000 worth of equipment in a rage that was caught on camera. The viral footage revealed the shocking reality of what happens when rock legends lose control behind the scenes. March 15, 1984, was supposed to be just another routine recording session at Abbey Road Studios in London. But it became the day that Roger Waters' legendary temper finally exploded in front of rolling cameras, creating one of the most shocking celebrity meltdowns ever captured on film. The incident occurred during what should have been a straightforward overdub session for Waters' first solo album, The Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking. But tensions had been building relentlessly for weeks between Waters and the increasingly frustrated production team. The trouble started when Waters arrived at the prestigious studio 3 hours late, already visibly agitated and confrontational about delays in the album's production schedule. He had been under enormous psychological pressure since his acrimonious departure from Pink Floyd, desperately trying to prove to critics, fans, and industry executives that he could create commercially successful music without his former bandmates. The crushing weight of expectation was destroying him mentally, and everyone in the studio could sense that he was balanced precariously on the edge of something explosive and potentially dangerous. Waters had been increasingly difficult to work with throughout the entire recording process, making impossible demands, changing his mind about musical arrangements at the last minute, and treating the professional staff with growing contempt and disrespect. The production team, led by experienced engineer Michael Kamen, had grown progressively frustrated with his perfectionist tendencies and constant second-guessing of their professional expertise and years of experience. What nobody realized was that a documentary crew had been given special permission to film extensive behind-the-scenes footage for what was intended to be a promotional piece about Waters' creative process and artistic vision. The cameras were already rolling when Waters entered the legendary Studio 2 and immediately began aggressively criticizing the sound setup that the engineers had spent countless hours perfecting according to his previous specifications. He complained bitterly that the drum sound was too dry and lifeless, the guitar tone was too bright and harsh, and the vocal reverb was completely wrong for his artistic vision and the emotional tone he was trying to achieve. When Kamen politely suggested that they could make subtle adjustments during the mixing process, Waters erupted into a vicious tirade about the alleged incompetence of everyone around him. "You people have absolutely no idea what I'm trying to achieve here," Waters screamed, his face turning an alarming shade of red with uncontrolled fury. "This is supposed to be serious art, not some commercial garbage that sounds like every other mediocre album on the radio. I demand absolute perfection, and all I'm getting is pathetic mediocrity from people who clearly don't understand my artistic vision or respect my creative standards." The atmosphere in the room became suffocatingly uncomfortable as Waters continued his brutal verbal assault on the production team. He accused them of deliberately sabotaging his album, suggested they were intentionally trying to make him fail and destroy his solo career, and claimed that their apparent lack of artistic understanding was systematically ruining his reputation and future prospects. The documentary cameras captured every disturbing moment of his increasing agitation and psychological deterioration, creating a permanent record of his complete mental breakdown. The breaking point came when Waters noticed that one of the expensive Neumann microphones wasn't positioned exactly where he claimed to have requested it during the previous recording session. This seemingly minor detail, which could have been corrected in a matter of seconds, triggered an explosive eruption of rage that shocked and terrified everyone present. Waters began screaming incoherently about how his specific instructions were being deliberately ignored and how the entire production team was conspiring against him to destroy his artistic credibility. Without any warning, Waters grabbed the heavy microphone stand and hurled it across the studio with tremendous force and frightening accuracy. The precious Neumann U47 microphone, worth over $15,000 and considered irreplaceable by audio engineers worldwide, shattered against the wall with a sickening crash. sending expensive components and fragments flying across the room like shrapnel. But this devastating destruction was only the beginning of his terrifying rampage. The adrenaline and uncontrolled fury coursing through his system seemed to amplify his compulsive need to destroy everything around him. Waters then turned his maniacal attention to the mixing console, a state-of-the-art Neve board that represented the technological heart of Abbey Road's world-renowned recording capabilities. He began pulling faders with violent force, ripping out cables and connections, and smashing delicate control knobs with his bare fists. The horrified engineers watched helplessly as thousands of dollars worth of precision electronic equipment was systematically destroyed by one of rock music's most respected and supposedly sophisticated artists. "You want to ruin my album?" Waters screamed as he continued his methodical assault on the mixing board. "Fine. I'll ruin everything else first. Nobody treats Roger Waters like some amateur musician who doesn't know what he wants. I'm a genius, and you're all incompetent fools who wouldn't recognize real art if it hit you in the face." The documentary crew continued filming throughout the entire terrifying incident, capturing footage that would later become legendary and infamous in music industry circles. Waters' face was contorted with an almost demonic rage as he moved from one piece of expensive equipment to another, seemingly determined to destroy everything valuable within his reach. His behavior was so extreme and unpredictable that several people in the studio began to genuinely fear for their personal safety and started moving cautiously toward the exits. Waters picked up an expensive Martin acoustic guitar that had been carefully prepared for overdubs and began smashing it repeatedly against the floor with savage intensity until it was nothing but splinters, twisted metal strings, and broken dreams. He then grabbed a vintage Fender Rhodes electric piano, a classic instrument worth thousands of dollars, and pushed it over with tremendous force, sending keys and delicate internal components scattering across the studio floor in a cacophony of destruction. The rampage continued with increasing intensity as Waters turned his attention to the studio monitors, grabbing speaker cables and yanking the massive Yamaha NS10 speakers from their carefully positioned stands. Each speaker was worth several $1,000s and had been precisely calibrated for optimal sound reproduction. But Waters seemed completely oblivious to the staggering financial cost of his actions. He was in a trance-like state of pure fury, driven by emotions that had been building up for months of creative frustration, professional pressure, and personal insecurity about his ability to succeed without Pink Floyd. Michael Kamen finally found his voice and tried desperately to intervene, pleading with Waters to stop before he seriously injured himself or caused even more catastrophic damage. "Roger, please, we can fix whatever's wrong with the setup. Just calm down and tell us what you need. This isn't solving anything, and you're destroying irreplaceable equipment." But Waters was completely beyond rational thought or reasoning. He turned toward Kamen with wild, unfocused eyes and screamed that it was too late for fixes, that the entire session was irreparably ruined, and that everyone involved was hopelessly incompetent and didn't deserve to work with a true artist. Waters then spotted the beautiful drum kit that had been meticulously set up for the session, a vintage Ludwig kit worth over $8,000 and considered a prized possession by the studio. He grabbed one of the heavy floor tom drums and hurled it across the room with surprising strength, where it crashed violently into a rack of expensive outboard gear. Compressors, equalizers, and reverb units toppled to the floor in a spectacular cascade of sparks and twisted metal, as thousands of dollars worth of irreplaceable studio equipment was destroyed in a matter of seconds. The most shocking and terrifying moment of the entire rampage came when Waters picked up a heavy microphone boom stand and began using it as a weapon against the remaining equipment. He swung it like a professional baseball player wielding a bat, methodically smashing amplifiers, effect pedals, and anything else within his devastating reach. The sound of metal striking metal and glass shattering echoed through the studio like a war zone as Waters continued his systematic destruction of everything around him, with increasing violence and intensity. Abbey Road security finally arrived after what felt like hours, but had actually been only about 12 minutes of continuous, methodical destruction. They found Waters standing in the middle of the completely demolished studio, breathing heavily, and surrounded by the smoking wreckage of what had once been tens of thousands of dollars worth of professional recording equipment. The documentary cameras had captured every single moment of the incident, creating footage that would become one of the most shocking celebrity meltdowns ever recorded in entertainment history. The immediate aftermath was complete chaos, as studio management tried desperately to assess the catastrophic damage and determine what, if anything, could be salvaged from the destruction. The final tally was absolutely staggering. Over $50,000 worth of equipment had been destroyed or severely damaged during Waters' 12-minute rampage of pure destruction. Microphones, mixing boards, instruments, amplifiers, and delicate recording devices had all been casualties of his explosive temper and complete loss of control. Waters himself seemed to snap back to reality once security arrived, apparently shocked and confused by the extent of the destruction he had caused. He looked around the demolished studio with what appeared to be genuine bewilderment, as if he couldn't quite believe that he had been responsible for such extensive and expensive damage. The uncontrollable rage that had consumed him so completely just moments before seemed to evaporate instantly, leaving behind only embarrassment and the growing realization of what his outburst would cost him, professionally and financially. The documentary crew, meanwhile, found themselves in possession of footage that was far more dramatic and revealing than anything they had hoped to capture for their promotional piece. The behind-the-scenes glimpse of Waters' creative process had turned into documentation of a complete psychological breakdown, showing a disturbing side of rock stardom that the public rarely sees, and that most artists desperately try to hide from public view. Abbey Road Studios immediately banned Waters from their facilities permanently and demanded full compensation for all the destroyed equipment. The incident created a major scandal within the music industry, with many professionals questioning whether Waters' artistic temperament made him too dangerous and unpredictable to work with safely. Record executives began expressing serious concerns about his mental stability and his ability to complete projects without creating expensive disasters that could bankrupt studios and endanger personnel. The footage from the documentary crew was initially suppressed completely, with Waters' management team working desperately around the clock to prevent its release to the public or the media. They understood that such extreme and violent behavior could destroy his reputation permanently and make it impossible for him to work with other professionals in the future. However, copies of the footage began circulating within the industry almost immediately, and eventually portions of it were leaked to music journalists and television programs worldwide. When the footage finally became public several years later, it created a sensation that shocked even Waters' most devoted fans around the world. The image of one of rock's most intellectual and sophisticated artists completely losing control and destroying expensive equipment conflicted dramatically with his carefully constructed public persona as a thoughtful, politically conscious musician and serious artist committed to social justice and artistic integrity. The incident had lasting and devastating consequences for Waters' career and his ability to work with other musicians and producers throughout the international music industry. Many professionals became extremely reluctant to collaborate with him, fearing that his unpredictable temper could lead to similar destructive outbursts that could endanger their personal safety and destroy their expensive equipment. Recording studios began requiring additional insurance policies and substantial security deposits when booking sessions with Waters, recognizing him as a significant potential liability that could cost them thousands of dollars in damages. The psychological impact extended beyond Waters himself to affect everyone who witnessed the terrifying incident firsthand. Studio personnel reported experiencing lasting trauma and anxiety from seeing someone they respected completely lose control and become violent. Several crew members required professional psychological counseling to deal with the emotional aftermath of witnessing such extreme and unpredictable behavior from a respected industry figure they had previously admired. For Waters personally, the incident forced him to confront the severe psychological pressure and uncontrolled anger that had been building steadily throughout his career. He eventually sought comprehensive professional psychiatric help to deal with his explosive temper and the underlying psychological issues that had led to such extreme and destructive behavior. The $50,000 in damages he was forced to pay served as an expensive but necessary lesson about the serious consequences of letting unchecked emotions override professional judgment and basic human decency. The viral nature of the footage, even in the pre-internet era, demonstrated how quickly and devastatingly damaging information could spread through industry networks and ultimately reach the general public. It served as a cautionary tale about how just a few minutes of lost control could permanently damage a professional reputation that had taken decades to build and establish within the competitive music industry. The incident ultimately became part of rock history, representing a pivotal moment when the intense pressures of fame and artistic ambition collided with devastating psychological and financial consequences. It serves as a permanent reminder that even the most successful and respected artists are vulnerable to complete psychological breakdown when pushed beyond their emotional and mental limits by relentless pressure and unrealistic expectations from fans, critics, and industry executives. The legacy of that 12-minute rampage continues to influence discussions about artist mental health, professional responsibility, and crisis management in creative industries. It remains one of the most dramatic and disturbing examples of how unchecked pressure and ego can lead to devastating consequences for everyone involved, serving as both a cautionary tale and a call for better support systems for artists under extreme stress. If this shocking story of rock star meltdowns, explosive tempers, and the devastating consequences of losing control inspired you, make sure to subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. Share this video with anyone interested in the dark reality behind music industry glamour. Have you ever witnessed someone's anger completely destroy their professional reputation? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to ring that notification bell for more incredible stories about the hidden pressures that drive music legends to their breaking points.